Morning. I'd like to call the Legacy Finance Committee meeting to order. So we have a quorum and we're open for business. Anybody had an opportunity to represent Escriba? Have an opportunity to look at the minutes for our March 27th meeting? If so, would you be willing to move them, sir?
So moved, Chair.
Thank you, Representative Escriba. We have the minutes before us. Any questions regards to the minutes? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The minutes are approved. Thank you, Representative Escriba.
Thank you.
So, as everybody on the committee knows, we've had a little bit of a blessing with the forecasts, and so there's today there's some of the bigger components of the Legacy Fund, Lessard-Sams and the Clean Water Council are going to offer their presentations on suggested spendings for the surplus or the increase in the funds that above the original bills that they had submitted. And so so that's our opportunity today. And starting off with the Clean Water Council, welcome, Mr. Gardner, and go ahead when you're ready, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For the record, my name is Paul Gardner. I'm the administrator for the Clean Water Council. The Clean Water Council recommends how to make use of the Clean Water Fund, which is 1/3 of the revenue from the Clean Water Land and Legacy Amendment. The council is advisory. We do recognize that the legislature is the only entity with the constitutional authority to spend money, but we make these $25 million in recommendations for fiscal 24 and 25 for your consideration. You were very generous, Mr. Chair, in giving us time when we had $18 million a couple of months ago, and there were some areas of contention which have been resolved for the moment, at least as far as the Clean Water Fund is concerned. We also incorporated some other ideas, including one that had percolated into this committee, so we offer those for your consideration. I did this presentation in the Senate in 3 minutes. That's, I don't think you really want me to do that in 3 minutes, but I won't take 30 either. So just give me this or this, Mr. Chair, depending on what you need. So.
Okay, more than 3, yes, for sure.
Oh, very good. Mr. Chair, the total amount we have in the February forecast in the Clean Water Fund for fiscal 24 and 25 now is now $25,426,000. Mr. Chair, we talked about a nitrate response in southeastern Minnesota. This is one part of an overall strategy. The governor has submitted a supplemental budget that includes several other components. This includes a public health response from the health department, as well as other efforts to avoid future nitrate contamination that we have in the next slide. Last time we talked about, we had a request for, I think it was more than $6 million for the Department of Health. It is now $2.79 million. We're focusing on identifying where wells are that existed before the well code went into effect in the mid-70s. There are a substantial number of those in the southeast. We also are offering free testing for private well users to see if they have high nitrates in their well, educate them on what their options are, provide the outreach, and this local and state capacity to actually do the work. I'm sure there were reasons in the Senate, but they took out the outreach money. But it's really important that we have people who actually do the work so that we can spend the money on the testing and the well inventory to figure out where those wells are. We did take out the contentious part, which was the private well mitigation, which included reverse osmosis and drilling new wells. We had a very constructive and thoughtful dialogue about the constitutionality question with nonpartisan staff in the Senate. And I, in particular, worked with them on listing different scenarios. What if we drill a well for this reason versus that reason? And drilling a new well is protective of groundwater, but if the primary reason is to deal with high nitrates that exist already, the Senate was of the view that that would not be permissible under the Legacy Amendment. In the end, in lieu of any sort of legal opinion or judicial decision, the choice as to what is permissible lies with the people who appropriate the money, who are the House and Senate. So it was pretty clear that well mitigation was not an appropriate place for us at this time. So the governor has proposed general fund use for that private well mitigation to help people get get cleaner and safer water. I know that there is a proposal in the House relating to a fee that may help support that, and we will just see how that goes. But our focus is not on the mitigation for this part with the health department. Also related to the southeast, to prevent future nitrate contamination, we would like to turbocharge the existing efforts that we're doing to provide technical assistance to farmers that we're using statewide, but provide an additional focus in southeast to have people work direct with farmers to show them things like cover crops that you see on the right and no-till methods that can help reduce nitrate intrusion into groundwater. We've also had a backlog of more than $4 million of requests for low-interest loans to the state Ag Department for the Ag Best Management Practices Loan Program. This helps fund things like equipment that will help farmers do the things like cover crops you see on the right, which are often not able to do with existing equipment. So we would help meet a substantial part of that backlog. Easements are also a critical method for reducing the intrusion of nitrates in groundwater. The Clean Water Fund pretty much funds permanent easements. These aren't temporary easements. So these are rim easements that could be used around sinkholes and the like and help protect our trout streams. So we can take some marginal lands out of production and provide permanent protections. And finally, there was a proposal put forward by the PCA for the capital investment bill that has been forwarded over many years, I think, without some success for a continuous nitrate sensor monitoring network. These would be 60 to 80 nitrate sensors, usually attached to a bridge abutment that would have continuous monitoring of nitrate levels in our lake or in our streams and rivers. We noticed that Representative Lee had a bill that would actually put this in the Clean Water Fund, and the council had a chance to deliberate that, and they said, well, this sounds like it's right in our wheelhouse, and we have some money, so we'll, this sounds like a good idea, so thank you. It'll probably take some pressure off the bonding bill, I assume, also. That will also help us figure out if our other work around the state is working, so we want to have an idea in real time what our nitrate levels are in those streams. Regarding our PFAS response, which is our other critical issue in the state, these haven't changed since the last time we were here. We need to top off a couple of programs to make sure that we're looking for PFAS in areas that we might not expect it using our existing monitoring network. That's a fairly cheap effort since we already have the infrastructure to do that. Fish contamination assessment for the DNR, in addition to looking for mercury and PCBs, we'd add PFAS. And then finally, the health department seeks some additional funding in their lab to be able to establish more health-based guidance for fish consumption on PFAS. And there are hundreds of PFAS compounds. We could probably burn up the Clean Water Fund for the rest of the time just examining all of those compounds, but we would like to prioritize those for a couple of them. Mr. Chair, we also have a couple of other things where it's a timely scaling up of an opportunity because of the extra funds that wouldn't necessarily have any tails in all cases. So easements in the north central part of Minnesota where we have high quality waters has been a priority for the council. We have waters in the upper Mississippi headwaters, for example, in the Rum River where the water is in very good shape, and we'd like to keep it that way, and giving landowners some options with a critical shoreline easement to help maintain that high quality would be a priority. We do have a numerical goal of trying to protect or restore 200,000 acres in that region in the years to come. Mr. Chair, we also have a recommendation for $2 million to add to our existing low-income grant program for our subsurface sewage treatment system, or SSTS program. These would be for private septic systems on properties that are usually worth less than the cost of replacing a septic system. We have infrastructure in place for counties to distribute these grants, and we could get at least 140 more households, low-income households around the state to use those. We do have a couple of metro counties that qualify for those as well. We're asking for $2 million to add to an existing program, the Watershed Partners Legacy Grants. Mr. Chair, we've talked about how agencies are usually the first recipients of Clean Water Fund dollars before they are distributed elsewhere. About 2/3 of the money goes in grants, often to other local governments, but we haven't had many opportunities for nonprofits as well as tribal governments to apply for funding from the Clean Water Fund. So we revived an old idea of a grant round where we've distributed $1 million so far, half to tribal governments and half to NGOs like lake associations to be able to solve a particular problem. We do want to increase that because the demand is certainly there. We do want to make sure that those projects fit well with the prioritization in all of our various plans to begin with, so we're not doing random acts of conservation, that we have a plan to target these efforts. But it is an opportunity, and we do get inquiries from lake associations and other nonprofits all the time, and this is an area where we can direct them for a competitive grant program. Getting close to the end, Mr. Chair, we have $1 million for Bowser. We have been leaving some federal money on the table from the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative. We have used money from part of that for Lake Superior in the St. Louis River cleanup, but there is something called the LAMP program, the Lake, ooh, boy, I'm not good on the, Lake-Wide Action and Management Plan. I think I spelled it out there for a reason because I wouldn't remember. That is a pot of money that would allow us to do shoreland work in the Lake Superior Basin. And while I can't guarantee you that we get a 1-to-1 match or a 1-to-2 match, we do know that we'd be able to get federal matching funds to do that. But our soil and water districts in that area have not had the capacity to actually put those projects together. Next, the PCA said that they can handle another $1 million for chloride reduction grants. We do have a lot of cities that have high chloride output. Sometimes can be solved with bonding for a major wastewater treatment upgrade, but in some cases we can help with source reduction to help residents replace inefficient water softeners that run on a timer versus an on-demand system, and we have used grants to help switch some of those out. And that actually has turned out to be a lot cheaper than pouring new concrete in the lake. And then finally, Mr. Chair, in the Metro, we had a particular interest here with stormwater research. The U of M Stormwater Research Center has done research to figure out the most effective and cost-effective ways to reduce pollutants in urban areas. The Metro, obviously, being a prime candidate. One of their outputs they've had that's been wildly successful has been in investigating enhanced street sweeping. I live in the city of Shoreview, and they were a test for this. They got I think it's a recirculating street sweeper. I don't know exactly how it works, but it helps reduce the amount of phosphorus that's coming from sediment, leaves and grass and the like at a cost in a few $100s per pound, not $1,500 or $2,000 per pound. So other cities are now starting to adopt this in the metro area, and it's just a cheap way to get to where we need to be to reduce phosphorus. Mr. Chair, that's it. That does add, I do have the spreadsheet just to prove it. It does add up to $25,426,000. And I'm happy to answer any questions. And we're also joined by John Barton, our council chair, who said he was perfectly comfortable just being in the wings. And we have a bevy of agency staff who have the ability to answer some more technical questions.
We have someone from Winona County Commissioner that wants to offer public testimony, so
I just saw that in the agenda.
Yeah. Please come forward and just kind of, and then we'll, please stick around, Mr. Gardner.
Thank you, Chair. And
Welcome.
Welcome. Thank you, Chair and committee members. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I am Chris Meyer. I'm a Winona County Commissioner from southeastern Minnesota. These are my opinions and not necessarily those of the full board, although I can tell you that most of the members of the board have expressed desire for financial assistance in addressing the public health aspect of the private well contamination by nitrates and other chemicals. Winona County is also a member of the Minnesota Inter-County Association, and our nitrates in groundwater subgroup met yesterday afternoon and voiced complete support for the $25.4 million Clean Water Council supplemental funding request. I'm here to urge this committee or the legislature to particularly to fully fund the provisions related to the public health aspect of the private well contamination. We recently received an update from our staff in Winona County on this topic. They are estimating that we have between 8,000 and 9,000 private wells in Winona County. We know the location of only about 4,800 of those wells, and thus we have a desire to locate between 3,200 and 4,200 currently unknown wells. Minnesota Department of Health indicates that in the entire southeast region, 20% of the wells are unknown. In Winona County, these older wells are likely to be those that are contaminated, as they were drilled into the shallower Prairie du Chien and Jordan aquifers, and they were constructed prior to the well code, which is also why they're not on the Minnesota Well Index. And this makes support to locate, educate, test, and assist the users of those wells even more important, because it's the unknown wells that are most likely to be contaminated. I want to share that it is also not just nitrates. Dakota County did a 10-year study, and the output of that study really showed that as the level of nitrates that are present in a private well increase, the chance that a multiple set of pesticides or herbicides are likely to be present. And if the nitrates in your private well are over the safe drinking limit, then there's a 95% chance that a pesticide's present also over the safe drinking limit. Our staff has also shared that since Winona County began doing well permitting itself in 1989, that we can identify about 1,800 of the 4,800 known wells that are new wells. And those are wells that were constructed in compliance with the Minnesota Well Code. They have a full casing, they have grouting, and they are most likely drilled into the Lone Rock or the other two lower aquifers. These new wells have a very low level of nitrate contamination at just something like 0.2%, and that's compared to the 19% overall that was shown in the county by the Minnesota Department of Ag Township Well Testing Program. So this information simply highlights the importance of locating and assisting owners of those older wells in southeastern Minnesota. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Meyer. Thank you for question. Maybe there might be a question for you. So, Chair Vang.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Commissioner. I'm wondering if you guys have like a total estimated need of how much it will cost to update those wells that needs to be updated.
Commissioner Meyer.
The price of drilling a new well is very expensive, and so our staff quoted to us numbers from $20,000 to $40,000 or $60,000. The reverse osmosis option, in terms of making sure that folks immediately can have safer water, is more like $2,000 to get folks set up, and then there's an annual cost for the replacement of filters. So I don't know that drilling new wells is always an option, but certainly for those vulnerable populations, it's going to be our priority to make sure they have access to safe water.
Chair Vang.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I think it'll be helpful for me since, as the Chair of Agriculture, and we have jurisdiction regarding fertilizer use and pesticide use, for me to understand the bigger impact or high level need of the communities affected by this, and in that way I can also help advocate on your behalf too as well.
Thanks.
Thank you.
And Mr. Chair,
Mr. Gardner.
just for some context, the Health Department in their fiscal estimates put the cost of drilling a new well on average to be $28,000. Some are going to be higher, some will be lower, and the cost to do reverse osmosis was around $2,600 plus the money for replacing the filters. So it's substantial.
So, Mr. Gardner, just a quick question. So, do you have any comment, or your council, any comment on the bill that came out of the Senate?
Well, Mr. Chair, just for background, there were three items that were put into the Senate legacy bill that weren't in our recommendations. One is for the Riverwatch program in the Minnesota Valley, which I believe Representative Hansen is laying over for possible consideration in his bill. There's a bill that has been advocated by cities that would have a PFAS monitoring below wastewater treatment plants for $500,000. That's interesting. It hasn't come before the council, but certainly is something of merit. And then there was $5.4 million for a 50-year water plan, which would be the first tranche of a $14.6 million 50-year water plan. The council is familiar with that. There was $200,000 appropriated for a scope of work for the university to figure out what that plan would look like. One of our committees gave some feedback in November before their report came to the legislature, and the university came back with a cost of doing this over several years of being $14.6 million. I would just convey our leadership's reaction, which was that the legislature from both parties in both houses for years has said, give us fewer plans and more projects. And so our recommendations are heavily focused on putting money in the ground to solve problems today and get people safer water today. There certainly is merit to looking at what we need to do to have the water we want in 2075 or so. But as requested, that bill would displace the ability of some people to get clean water today.
Thank you. Representative Scrava.
Thank you, Chair Lilly. Director, you have $2 million for NGO projects. What is the time frame for spending any of these dollars on the supplemental request? Do they have to be spent by 26, 28, 30? What is the time frame?
Mr. Gardner.
Mr. Chair, it's been some years since I actually had to write a bill, but I think the rule of thumb is usually we want to have some of those dollars able to bleed over into the next biennium. So something authorized to spend in fiscal 25, we'd probably like to have it used by, I don't know, June 30th, 2027 anyway. We also have, the $1 million we got for that program was split in two. That's how you usually do it. You got one column for the first year and another column. So it was $500,000 in each. And just for administrative efficiency, Bowser asked us if it was all right to just wait until they got the second tranche to make it $1 million before they did the RFP, so that we just didn't have extra paperwork just for $500,000 twice. So we still haven't done the RFP for the fiscal 24 appropriation yet. That'll happen probably in August or September. So it could stretch out a few years by this extra request, probably to 2027.
Representative Scrava.
Chair, and I got several questions, if I can give them to you at once, and then you can answer them. So if the NGOs, you stated lake associations or whatever, I don't know if you have certain nonprofit groups that support the Bowser through Bowser. This is all going to be through Bowser, correct?
Correct. Bowser would have a separate RFP for this compared to their other programs.
Then the time part, what I'm trying to get at is the $2 million for low-income SSTS is adequate, but if the $2 million for the watershed partners and legacy grants doesn't go in the time frame, it would be nice to use it up there. I'm advocating for more septic system replacements because I know that directly affects the watersheds. And there's more than 140 that need help. And down below, in my opinion, I don't see any concrete. I see things that, and our Bowser is a good Bowser, Northeast Missouri, they do a good job. But I'm looking more for how can we get more bang for out of our buck instantly and get the groundwater cleaned up. That's all. Thank you, Chair.
Mr. Gardner, is there?
Mr. Chair, the MPCA has given us a table that said for an extra 100,000, 500,000, $1 million, here's how many more systems we could get compliant. And what they have said to us is that we're never done because a septic system will fail eventually, just like anything in your house does. And so we could be fixing septic systems for a very long time. We do fund most of the program for counties to do an enhanced inspection, which is more than they would have with existing funds, and that has helped the compliance rate for any septic system go way up. And then we've had, I don't know, it's about 400,000, I think, in the biennium to do low-income grants before, which has maybe helped 3 or 4 systems per county, and not all counties choose to accept it. This number of another 2 million would quintuple the amount of that we've had going to the low-income grants. So it's a new chunk of change there. There are a couple of areas like easements where we know that there was a huge backlog, so we're trying to chip away at multiple things simultaneously.
Representative Scrava.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Paul.
Representative Heitzman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I had a couple of questions, and they're kind of going back to our last meeting, Director. I saw that there were a couple of what looked like previously introduced bills that had been here in the House dropped into the recommendations in the supplemental. And I had a number of questions, and I made a few comments about that at our last meeting. I think I heard you mentioned the bonding proposal that had been introduced here was in these recommendations. Was there anything else, Director?
Mr. Gardner.
So, Mr. Chair, as Governor, I think it was Governor Purpich, you would say there's no monopoly in good ideas. And so we had the time to consider something that was working its through the process here, and we asked the PCA why we had never been asked at the Clean Water Council for $2 million for nitrate sensors, because it sounded like a good idea, and we couldn't find a reason not to do it, so that was the main reason for that. The other, there is a bill by Representative Ryer about easements in southeastern Minnesota meant to get at reducing intrusion of nitrates through the porous geology in southeast. I think to split hairs, that bill has some language that is different from maybe what we're suggesting, but it's still for easements in those vulnerable geological areas. And I think as the bill goes forward, we'll probably haggle over what the rider language says there. So I would say we were thinking of putting about the same amount of money into it anyway. I think exactly how it's deployed will be, there's a difference of opinion, and we'll have to haggle through that. So.
Representative Heitzman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd be happy to stand corrected, but isn't it somewhat unusual for bills or ideas, whether they're good or and maybe someone might be indifferent, to show up in recommendations from the council? Usually the council, it's been my experience, operates quite independently from the legislature, and I don't recall, but maybe I'm incorrect. So if there are other examples that I missed, I'd be, like I said, happy to stand corrected.
Sure.
Mr. Gardner.
Mr. Chair and Representative Heitzman, I should mention Representative Heitzman and Representative Purcell are our House members on the council. Yes, the council does like to protect its independence, but since they are volunteering their time, they know that members aren't keeping up with every development all the time, and the legislature moves at a very fast clip. We have been chided for being flat-footed, I think is the term that was used, for not being very responsive to what the legislature is thinking. And in the case of the nitrate sensors, it was just an example where people said, that actually sounds like a good idea. So we wanted to be transparent about that reasoning. We did notice that there were some bills that were general fund requests in the House and Senate, and then we showed up at a hearing, and then they became clean water fund requests. Those are things that we just sort of had to roll with the punches on those and figure out how to process it. So.
Representative Heitzman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So just a comment. As I mentioned, having served on the Clean Water Council for some time, it does, in my recollection, I think qualify these particular recommendations showing up after previously having been introduced as bills. I'm not saying it's necessarily right or wrong. I just wanted to recognize for the public and for the members present. That is somewhat unusual, and maybe there'll be more of that. Maybe you could call it a collaboration. Maybe there'd be less of a separation between the council and the legislature. But as it is somewhat notable, I'm noting it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
And Mr. Chair, we always appreciate Representative Heinsman and
Gardner.
others legislators of both parties keeping us honest, so.
So I had a question on, you mentioned easements, and so are your easements, you mentioned permanent, are all the easements that you're doing, or most of them, are they permanent? Because I was under the impression that in the clean water space, that a lot of them were temporary easements. And where like Lessard-Sams, I believe they're permanent. So I think we're better served as a state if we're permanent.
Mr. Chair, we do have an easement expert here, but she can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the Clean Water Council only funds permanent easements. I think it's a yes. I know that Representative Hanson and I have had discussions about temporary federal things like CRP that might last for 10 years, and then because of economic conditions, a farmer might dig them up, and then the conservation stuff is lost. But Ms. Doucette at Bowser could give you the answer you're looking for.
Well, thank you, Mr. Gardner. I'm really happy to hear that. Hi, welcome. Please state your name and
Thank you, Chair Lilly.
obviously heard the question.
I did. Thank you, Chair Lilly. Sharon Doucette, easement section manager at the Board of Water and Soil Resources. And so the question was the permanency of our typical Reinvest in Minnesota RIM easement program easements. The statutory authority for RIM does allow for less than permanent, but it also varies depending on the funding source. All of our Lessard-Sams Outdoor Heritage Council easements must be permanent because of the language in the LSOHC language. For Clean Water Council, typically and historically, we have done all permanent easements. We haven't offered a less than permanent option for several years, probably since the early 2000s. One of the programs that we have funded through Clean Water Council does offer a 30-year easement option, but if it is the council's desire for this particular $4 million of supplemental funds to be permanent, we can certainly make that happen.
Thank you. I'm happy to hear that they're more permanent because, you know, we struggle as the federal easements are blinking off or whatever you want to call it. And then it's sad to lose that land off of, you know, not being permanent. So,
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Gardner.
in the ag census that just came out, it note that we have 1 million less acres enrolled in conservation programs in Minnesota, but none of those should be from legacy funds that I'm aware of.
Thank you. Thank you for coming forward. Lead backer.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Under the Southeast Minnesota nitrate response, have they, on the $2 million for 60 to 80 stream locations, have that been determined yet, do you know, as MPCA, or are they just pulling it out of the air? They want to do 60 to 80?
Mr. Gardner.
Mr. Chair and Representative Backer, I don't think the locations have been selected exactly, but the idea is to focus on rivers and streams where nitrate has been an issue.
Mr. Backer.
Yeah,
I mean, I could.
that would be nice to know. That would be nice to know. That would be very much appreciated, and so forth, to make sure it's in the right areas, because what an agency may think is a good area may not be where that needs to go. That would be very nice.
Representative Backer, we have a dial a friend, I think.
I think so.
This is great. I have people, Mr. Chair.
Please state your name and go ahead and answer, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Glenn Skuda, Watershed Division Director at the Pollution Control Agency. Mr. Chair, Representative Backer, no, the locations have not yet been selected, other than, as Mr. Gardner said, we would be focusing in areas of the state, southern Minnesota, where we know that the levels of nitrate are already high. But the selection process for the exact sites would be done in cooperation with local units of government to make sure we're putting them in locations that are going to be helpful for management in the future.
Lead Backer.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that there. 60 to 80, how did you come about with that number? Please, thank you. Chair.
Mr. Skuda.
Mr. Chair, Representative Becker, this is, it's based on the cost of the equipment, which is, for nitrate continuous sensors are not inexpensive. I can't quote you a price right now, but I know they're expensive pieces of equipment. And so just that and the cost of operating and maintaining those pieces of equipment and stations.
Representative Becker.
Yeah, if this goes through and so forth, it would be nice to have that information where those are. That would be very helpful. And then I have a second question that doesn't pertain to that, so thank you for coming down. My second question is on the $3.4 million Agriculture Best Management Practices Loan Program, do you know what equipments they're referring to, low-interest loans for equipment that reduce nitrate contamination? Is there another phone a friend?
Mr. Chair and Representative Backer, I can rattle off a few types of equipment, but they do have to meet certain criteria set by the Department of Agriculture for what they've known from data is actually going to help. But Ms. Wagner's here from Ag, if might be able to add, but our Ag BMP loan person isn't here, but we could also
If you could follow up with that, I would like to, that would be helpful. Yeah, I'm sorry, Chair. That's, that would be helpful. Thank you. That's it. That would be very helpful.
So, well, thank you for the discussion. Mr. Gardner, does this help with the nitrate? Generally, we would say help with the egg or the nitrate situation in southeast Minnesota. I mean, that's sounds like a lot of your focus has been in this package, additional packages in that area. Does that help with the meeting the goals that we have as a state?
Mr. Chair, it's part, as in most cases, the Clean Water Fund funds part of it. There's far more ambitious stuff going on for on-field practices as well as the mitigation part of things. We obviously want to deal with the current problem with stuff in people's wells and the future contamination. There's a soil health plan that's coming out from the University of Minnesota that's helped synchronize a lot of disparate efforts that have been going on for a couple of years. The future key, which we have funded in other programs, though, is really persuading landowners that doing things that are good for water quality are also good for the bottom line. And that's what the Ag Water Quality Certification Program is, for example. So every year, more and more people get enrolled and do better things. Nutrient management has gotten better, but we still have a current problem to deal with. And I think other states and other parts of the state are going to look to see how effective our response is so that they might use that as a model. We're very fortunate to have these voter-approved funds that other states don't have, so we often have to learn by doing to figure out the most effective and cost-effective way to solve a problem. And so I think other states are going to look to us to see how that works in the next few years. But we're very grateful to the legislature for their appropriations and the consideration of our proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gardner, and thank you everybody else that came. I just want to thank you and the Clean Water Council because I think you know, in your comments you did capture this committee's commitment to, you know, in the first few years we really did do a lot of studies, and you've really upped your game on trying to get real improvements in the ground. So your comments, I heard them. This committee, that's been important to you know, get some results. We're past halftime of the legacy amendment, and it's high time we, you know, or not, I mean, not that we haven't, but that we keep doing a better job of actually being successful. So thank you, Mr. Gardner, and thank you, everyone else.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
So with that, we're going to transition then to the Lessard-Sams team. Welcome back. We have Mr. Parvenko, and you're going to be running a presentation today. Go ahead, and thank you very much.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members. My name is Joe Pavelko. I'm the Assistant Director with the Lessard-Sams Outdoor Heritage Council. I thought what we would do is provide a quick refresher on what the Lessard-Sams Council does, and then have Katie Smith from the Minnesota DNR come down and talk to us about our shiny new project that we have for our council. The council had 7 meetings last year, and we do annual allocations. We had 7 meetings and 2 days of presentations, and then during that time, the council reviews proposals, they score the proposals, and then they hear presentations on the proposals. We received 53 total last year for $376 million, and the council recommended funding 50 proposals for $180 million. And now, after last week's meeting, we'll have 51 for $192 million. I always like to refer to our shiny, colorful handout that we give you guys every year. The front page gives a good summary of the recommendations. It talks about the total acres. Approximately 62,000 acres will be restored, enhanced, or protected. This year, it'll be 77.3 miles of shoreline will be restored, enhanced, or protected, and that's about 45% more than we normally do. And then also Representative Lee at our last meeting had a good question on leverage. And so at this meeting, we included a handout here that talks about each project and the amount of leverage that they're expected to bring to the table. The actual specifics of the leverage can be found in the accomplishment plan. Each project has what's called an accomplishment plan that spells out the budget, exactly what they're doing, who's getting the money, timelines of when they're going to do the work, where they're going to do the work, parcel lists with township range and section. All those types of things are in the actual accomplishment plan, and that can all be found on our website. To date, this is only including final reports, so this is money that's been received, the work has been done, and then it's been reported to the council and all approved, final, everything's done. We've spent $766 million worth of money. They were anticipated to bring $259 million worth of leverage, but actual leverage that the partners brought to the table was $328 million, so about $70 million more. So that equals about every dollar spent of OHF, we're getting about 33 cents of matching funds to do, OHF work. The middle of the handout, again, talks about the breakdown in acres and funding, and also by ecological section and the resource type and activity. We had talked about that at length at our last meeting, so that's kind of how the acres break down, and you can see averages and where the money's being spent, prairie versus southeast forest. The Lessard Council breaks the state of Minnesota into 5 different ecological sections. You'll see the state there with the map. And then also on the back side of the handout right here, it's the list of the actual projects. And that's just a list, and it talks about who's receiving the money. You'll see that there's many proposals have multiple partners, so it's actual partnerships. So some, like the DNR, may only have, the money's only going to DNR, but if you look at like Metro Big Rivers, who are spending money only in the metro area, they have the Minnesota Valley Trust National Wildlife Refuge, Friends of the Mississippi River, Great River Greening, Minnesota Land Trust, Trust for Public Land. So there's partnerships, and then there's single projects. Like I said before, last week on March 26th, the council had a late emergency meeting due to the fact that the February forecast came out and there was an additional $12 million. And the council invited the DNR, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, Army Corps of Engineers, and they talked about the invasive carp in the Mississippi River. And so I don't know if Katie Smith wants to come down and talk about that proposal, but the council voted unanimously to move forward with allocating that $12 million to the invasive carp problem in the Mississippi River. And there's a lot that goes into it, and there's still some unknowns, but DNR is here to talk about what the proposal looks like right now. We're still working with all of the partners and folks to finalize the actual language for the bill, so that's why we don't have anything now, but we're working on it, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Burbanko. Welcome, Ms. Smith, and heard your presentation the other day, but yeah, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, committee members. Good morning. I'm Katie Smith. I'm the Director of the Ecological and Water Resources Division at the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources. The DNR has been working to slow the spread of invasive bighead, black, grass, and silver carp since the early 2000s. Invasive carp have the potential to impact native aquatic communities, local economies, and Minnesota's outdoor heritage. DNR's work is guided by our invasive carp management plan, which describes Minnesota's approach to prevention and management of invasive carp to slow their spread, minimize their impact, and reduce the likelihood of reproducing in Minnesota waters. The plan was recently updated with extensive discussion and input from a broad group of technical experts and stakeholders. Plan elements include prevention and deterrence, monitoring to support response actions such as tagging and tracking of fish, and management and control such as commercial fishing. Prevention and deterrence strategies include permanent or temporary structures that prevent or slow the upstream movement of invasive carp. Lock and Dam 5 on the Mississippi River near Winona has been identified as a possible location to deter invasive carp. LSOHC invited DNR to attend a meeting on March 26th to discuss potential funding of a carp barrier at Lock and Dam 5 and to submit an initial draft proposal to outline a potential project. DNR developed the proposal with input and feedback from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. I believe the committee was provided copies of the proposal. In summary, it describes actions needed to evaluate, finalize design, confirm feasibility, and obtain required approvals prior to installation of a deterrent, and complementary actions to reduce the upstream passage of invasive carp and removal of invasive carp from the river. While DNR is glad to accelerate our work on a deterrent through this funding, it's important to recognize that the information available on cost, timeline, and other feasibility considerations is imperfect at this time. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and the U.S. Geological Survey are valued partners that DNR routinely collaborates with on invasive carp work. They would bring expertise and experience to this project. They've expressed interest in partnering while stressing that any project would require careful planning, evaluation, adaptive management, and coordination prior to making a go, no-go decision on barrier installation. Site-specific information would be needed in advance of barrier installation, as there are many engineering, evaluation, and research pieces that must be first explored. As part of project scoping, a number of practical considerations would also need to be addressed, including project duration and deliverables, fate of the equipment post-project, liability during operations, and project operation and maintenance responsibilities. Funding for potential post-project mobilization would also be a factor, and this funding would not cover any long-term costs such as operation and maintenance. Prior to installation, the necessary permits and permissions from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers would also need to be secured. DNR would need funding to be appropriated in a way that provides flexibility to allow for thoughtful execution of all phases of a research and evaluation project, recognizing that installation of any type of barrier will only occur if initial research and evaluation of challenges indicate that a barrier is warranted and feasible. If it does not appear warranted, we will inform LSOHC and the legislature of our findings and discuss before proceeding with any next steps. Funding should also include the flexibility for the DNR and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service to utilize some of the money for additional critical management activities, such as supplemental tagging, tracking, and commercial fishing to remove invasive carp, which is a critical piece of our management strategy and is supported by partners and stakeholders. And the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service experience with its barrier operating a deterrent and adding fishing to remove the deterred fish is most effective. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. I really appreciate your comments. And Representative Heitzman, did you have a question at this time, or do you want to?
Just a quick response, if it's okay, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate the comments from DNR this morning. I do just want to point out that this issue of invasive carp has been on our radar for a long time. And while I recognize there's lots of challenges to potentially getting this barrier put in, I got to tell you, folks around the state of Minnesota will lose their stuff if this issue isn't addressed. And they're not going to care what all of the obstacles were. They just want it done. And so I just can't express that strongly enough. And if there ever was an opportunity for DNR to shine and to really demonstrate some huge responsibility, I get it, but at the same time, the capacity to tackle something like this that people want done, boy, this is the time for DNR to really dig in and get something on this taken care of. It's at least been since 2012, Mr. Chair, that the Lessard-Sams has been addressing carp, invasive carp specifically, and my gosh, it has to move forward. And I know that we have others that are going to testify and talk about this issue today, but while we get that there's challenges here, the public just want it done. I got to say it, though. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. And thank you, Ms. Smith, for coming. Mr. Burbanko.
Mr. Chair and members, that's all we had. Would like to update your council, though, that the call for funding for next year, so we're on an annual cycle, the call for funding has just been opened. And so we just want to make sure all the legislators and everyone, the public knows that that's open now for applications. And if you have any ideas or you have constituents that want to or have an interest in applying, they can contact us, and we're here to help and want everybody to be successful. So that closes the end of May. So it's about a 2-month window you have to apply for the funds.
So we did receive, all members, I believe our offices received emails. Before you leave, Representative or Senator Saxog, I just want to recognize you. You're on Lessard-Sams, and thank you for your service on that. And so we've all received that email and the call of, to and your staff. As you have been in the past, I'm certain that you'll offer help to help people. Maybe you could tell more about that, where you can, how you've really tried to help people, new applicants and others that are trying to get access to these funds. Can you speak to that for a second?
Mr. Chair and members, our goal is to make every applicant successful. Excuse me. So that may include meeting with the applicant and going through, an initial phase of just, throwing around ideas without having anyone, taking the time to fill out the application. But once we all kind of agree that this is something that makes sense and it meets the criteria of the Outdoor Heritage Funds, then we will actually help you go into the online system. We have an online system that will, you put all your information in. It's actually pretty easy for the amount of money that you're able to get. But like I said, we're here to help, and that's our job, so.
So, Mr. Parvenko, and then just so the committee knows, going back to the invasive carp effort that we're trying to do, it's a little controversial. We don't, but if we don't do anything, I mean, it's a horrible situation. So maybe you can speak to this. Years ago, there was an investment made. Believe it or not, we invested, Lessard-Sams and this committee invested in a dam in Iowa. And this effort, we're trying to get, at least I did, I brought up trying to get Wisconsin to pay half on this too. But maybe you could speak to the effort that was done and why in Iowa at that time.
Mr. Chair and members, there was a appropriation a while ago. I can't remember the exact year, but part of that funding was to go to barriers in Iowa on a couple rivers or streams to prevent the invasive carp from coming into Minnesota. And it just happened that the best place that the DNR thought was the best place for those structures was in Iowa. And so the council thought that made sense, and it was funded.
Thank you. We have a group that came that's been kind of pushing for this, and the Friends of the Mississippi, I believe, right? You have some, and go ahead and introduce yourself, and I see you brought us a friend.
That is not a friend, Mr.
The this one's already dead, so it can be friendly. Chair Lilly and committee members, thank you so much for having me here today. I'm Colleen O'Connor-Toberman, the Land Use and Planning Director at Friends of the Mississippi River and the co-chair of the Stop Carp Coalition. Over the past year, the DNR has reported distressingly large catches of invasive carp in the Mississippi River in the pools below Lock and Dam 5 near Winona. And these fish are being caught in numbers never seen before in our state. If we let the invasive carp take over, they will irreparably harm the water-based recreation that's at the heart of Minnesota's identity and our economy. These carp decimate ecosystems and fisheries, and silver carp, like this one I brought along today, jump and injure boaters, which is not enjoyable for anyone on the water. And today, in the Mississippi River, we have no barrier against invasive carp for anything downstream of Minneapolis at St. Anthony Falls. The previous Lessard-Sams funded barriers are in the Missouri River watershed. So this leaves 175 miles of Minnesota's Mississippi River exposed to this imminent threat. That includes Lake Pepin, that includes the Minnesota and St. Croix rivers, and it includes countless other connected waterways. The DNR's new invasive carp plan rightly notes that no one tactic alone will protect our waters, and an integrated pest management approach requires us to use every tool at our disposal, including a deterrent system. State-funded research has identified Lock and Dam 5 as the most effective location in Minnesota for that deterrent. Invasive carp deterrents are being used elsewhere and are proving to be effective. Minnesota has the opportunity to capitalize on this new technology to preserve the ecological health and human enjoyment of our waters in ways that downstream states did not have the opportunity to do. When a deterrent is combined with other management efforts, those ones already underway, such as aggressive fish removal programs, tagging and tracking, ongoing research, and adjustment to the dam spillway gates, research suggests that we could achieve a carp blockage rate of 95% or more, and it's those final percentage points that matter the most in protecting us. Should we let this opportunity pass us by, we'll spend far more to remove those fish later with less success and more collateral damage, and that removal will be an ongoing annual cost that we'd have to find a way to pay every year, even in lean times. Illinois spends $10 million every year just on carp removal. And in contrast, annual operations and maintenance on a deterrent system will be a tiny fraction of that. The recommendation that the Lessard-Sams Outdoor Heritage Council has made is an ideal opportunity to fund a deterrent system quickly enough for it to be effective in protecting Minnesota. And the partnership between the Minnesota DNR and the federal agencies will bring the very best expertise to the project, because you have those federal partners who have worked on similar deterrents elsewhere working alongside our local experts. So I hope that when the amendment is brought forward, you will support the Outdoor Heritage Council's funding recommendation for the carp deterrent. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for? No, thank you. Do you want that for your office, Representative Heitzman?
You can have it. We don't want it.
I don't want it either.
So I'm going to take a quick break for a second here. Chair Lee, if we have an introduction that you'd like to make, sir, go ahead when you're ready.
Thank you, Chair Lilly. I just want to introduce members of the committees and to the public, some of our students from the Sojourner Truth Academy Urban Debate Team who has joined us this morning, who's sitting behind over there. Thank you all for joining us. Thank you, Chair Lilly.
Thank you, Chair Lee, and welcome. Welcome to the legislature. Welcome to the Legacy Committee. So, Chair Lee.
Thank you, Chair Lilly. And can I ask the DNR to come up just to talk about this project real quick? And then maybe from the director too, so I see that we have the plan here, Mr. Chair, but I don't know how much is the cost. I think I heard that the initial proposal was 180 and now the proposal is 190. And so is it around 10 million for this project that we will be considering in the future here?
Ms. Smith.
Mr. Chair, Representative Lee, we don't have a great estimate right now on what total cost might be. On page 2 of the proposal, we do have some costs that have been estimated. We have some comparisons with the systems that were installed at the other 2 locations owned and operated by the federal government for some context and perspective. We do have some costs that would be related to the full design, purchase and installation of the lock deterrent, trap and sort system, spillway gate deterrent, evaluation improvements, and then operations and maintenance. So we don't believe that the $12 million will cover everything, but that's the best information that we have right now.
Chair Lee.
Mr. Chair, thank you. So, Director or Manager, so just so we're clear, so the proposal that's going to come in front of us as an amendment will be $12 million, or what would that cost be?
Mr. Purvanko.
Mr. Chair and members, Joe Pavelka, the Assistant Director with Lessard-Sams. The total cost before the February forecast was $180 million. Now with the additional $12 million for the CARP, it'll be $192 million total.
Mr. Chair?
Chair Lee.
Okay, so the total cost for this CART project is $12 million. Okay. And so can we get a better explanation? You know, I see we have a draft proposal, but what would that $12 million be used for?
Director Smith.
Mr. Chair, Representative Lee, the estimated costs would include completing a full design of a deterrent system specific to Lock and Dam 5. It would be purchase and installation of the lock deterrent, a trap and sort system, a spillway gate deterrent, evaluation and improvements to the deterrent system, operations and maintenance cost, project management and support staff, and then there's some, as I mentioned, some context there for what the systems at other locations in the U.S. cost for some perspective, but we don't have exact figures. This is what we're going to be actively exploring with our federal partners. We've been having discussions with them already, and we'll continue to do so.
Chair Lee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I guess I would just say this, really appreciate that. And, you know, we have had this conversation with some of the advocates pushing for this project when they were looking at state capital investment dollars. And, you know, I think the conversation then when I spoke with them was that I think it's important to determine who will be the project owner, whether that's the federal government or the Minnesota DNR. And then, you know, I think just seeing what's been laid out here, that this does not include funding for staff to monitor the deterrent or whatnot. And so, like, I think it will be important for us as stewards of the public's dollar to know what would the cost be if we spend the $12 million here to do the design, but we don't have future funding to do the staffing and operations and maintenance of that, then are we really being stewards of the public's dollars? And so I just want us to be thinking of that as we make the decision whether or not to adopt the amendment for the cart bearer. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Chair Lee. Representative Heitzman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I can't help but chime in, and I have already talked about this earlier, so I'll try to keep it short. But this is one of those issues that, like I said earlier, we've been working on for over a decade. And those that are at this point now that have an opportunity to decide whether or not we're going to move forward or how we're going to move forward, we're all going to be held accountable on this. That includes DNR, that includes legislators, parties, whatever, fill in the blank. We have to work in a bipartisan way to get this done. We have to get it done and moving now. I just don't see any other option, because if we don't act, if we don't start moving forward and doing everything we possibly can to avoid invasive carp in Minnesota further entering our waters, the public will never forgive, and I don't blame them. So I don't care what DNR or the legislature or who all needs to partner together to get this done. It has to get done. I'm just going to keep pounding away on this until hopefully we can move past those obstacles that I agree, there's obstacles. Who's going to run it going forward? What are the challenges building it to begin with? There's going to be ongoing costs. Again, the public doesn't care. They just want it built. They want us to do this, and they don't want invasive carp further impacting Minnesota waters. I just hope that the details that are concerning don't get in the way of progress, because we have to move forward. I'm just going to leave it there, Mr. Chair. Thanks again.
Mr. Parvenko, can you tell what the council, what discussion, what happened, and what kind of the plan was then for the future, and, you know, some of these unknowns?
Yeah, Mr. Chair and members, the council had a similar discussion to what we're having now. I think there was some concern that if we waited, or if the council waited, that we'd maybe be waiting another 10 years. So the council realized and acknowledged that it's not a perfect situation. I mean, all the details aren't there, but they're confident enough with, DNR and Fish and Wildlife and all of the agencies that they think that they can work out something to get this done. And so they, again, voted unanimously to approve it and move it forward. But they're struggling with the same discussion. So once this goes through, the council, again, like I said, they have accomplishment plans. And so the accomplishment plan will spell out who's getting the money, how much is going where, the type of work they're doing. And then the council, in their approval for this, had 4 different, I'll say, milestones that need to be met. And so the council's going to be reviewing those. And if at any time it doesn't look correct, or there needs to be more discussion, it's going to go back to the council for discussion. So it's more of a partnership than it is just giving the money to the DNR and the agency folks to do the work. It's going to be more of the council's going to work with the DNR and the Fish and Wildlife Service to make sure everybody's on the same page moving forward.
Thank you. And I think it's good to ask the questions, and but to not do so, I mean, it's good, and hopefully we can keep asking those questions, and those benchmarks that you talk about are super important. And I'm glad that we're having discussion on it, because but if not to do something is dangerous too, so. Thank you very much for your presentation, and Ms. Smith, thank you for coming forward, and thank you for bringing the fish. At least. Thank you for our guests. It's nice to have a debate team. You got a little sense of a debate here, a little bit there, a little flavor of legislative debate, so it's kind of fun. So I think we're kind of there for this. Just to let you all know, our next meeting will be actually not next Wednesday. It'll be Friday, April 12th at 10 a.m. So with that, we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.